I don't have pockets. You have to have this. Thank you.
Oh God, where do I put them? There. There we go. This is the book of Job. There we go.
The spelling of Job irks my soul.
Job. The book of Job. The book of unemployment.
She's dark. Good morning. That thing.
She's so pretty.
She is pretty.
She's so pretty.
It's so hard. It's very weird.
David.
I also can't see her.
Oh no. There we go. All messed up. Oh, it's hot. Oh, Ghost was foist. I see that.
Should delete his comment.
I could delete his comment. I have that power. Doesn't count if it's misspelled. Says the Fed. Shoot. What was I doing? Oh, I guess so. While we wait. I have all this stuff messed up. We do have that. That is true.
I didn't know that you could hear that.
You don't think I could hear you?
Yeah, I didn't think you would be able to hear them.
Why would that be?
You have bulky boy headphones on, brother.
I mean, that's true. Yeah. That's true. They're not noise canceling headphones though. My stuff is all messed up. There it is. Tuesday, we're doing the Gospels. So that's at 7 p.m. Central Time on the other YouTube at the Tattoo Theist one. So that should be good. And I don't think anybody's added anything. So y'all will just be stuck with whatever I decided to talk about. Yeah, nothing. So I'm trying to remember to post in the podcast topics thing whenever the poll is finished or whenever we decide what we're talking about. So I did on this one. So if there's anything specific, these Beatles, man, if there's anything specific you guys want touched on for that, just put it in there.
We should be Genesis.
You actually should do that. Yeah, that's a great idea. These Beatles are driving me absolutely insane. But if anything comes up and you want that covered specifically, then put it in there so I can get ahead of it. I don't even know if we're going to finish what I already have. So I already have like a part 2 fleshed out to cover some of the stuff that we probably will not be able to get to. But if there's anything that's nagging at you, we can definitely, I will make room for it. Dare taking all our jabs, South Park. I need to show you some of the classic South Park stuff.
Okay,
like that. That makes no sense to you unless you've seen it. And it's just classic. It's very good. I'll be misspelling words all night, David. I don't feel like you misspell words that much.
That's true.
I feel like it's the phone. The phone does it most of the time.
I'm a horrible speller, Joe.
You are?
Yeah, I'm great at, like, I guess, vocabulary and stuff, but spelling sometimes just really gets me.
I'm an awful speller.
You know who isn't an awful speller?
You.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're decent.
We all gotta have a weakness.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. I lost it extremely quickly when I went from having no cell phone for a number of years to the iPhone being the thing. And I got the iPhone and it just magically fixed all the words that I spelt wrong and it was over from there. It's never been the same since.
Like words like Odyssey, I'll never spell correctly, no matter how hard I try.
Interesting. Interesting. Huh. I feel like the dumb
Yeah, it's just a
words.
jumble.
Yeah, I mean, I like I get it though. I get it though. And the thing we have on our side is the fact that the English language also just does not make sense. It doesn't actually follow its own rules a lot of the time. But I'm sure that's every language. Greek is similar, I know. Hebrew, I'm sure is. I don't know enough to say much, but I
Someone
would
needs to
assume.
make a purely phonetic language with a purely phonetic alphabet. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah, that would be nice. That would be very clarifying for sure. Yeah, there's no hope. Technology is going to ruin all of us with things like spelling.
Speak for yourself.
You're good for now. We'll see, girl. Technology is now ruining people's ability to do research because AI.
That's true.
It's a blessing and a curse type situation. That is for sure. I stick to one syllable words. David said that. Caveman language is the way to go. That's very true. All right, real quick. If you're watching this later, we have Discord. There's a link to the Discord pinned to the live chat. There's a link to the Discord in the description of the video. We do all these streams and whatnot on 2 different YouTube channels. So the one that you're watching now is all straight Bible study stuff. Right now, we're reading the Book of Giants on Thursday, Job on Sunday, and the Gospel of Truth on Saturday. Currently. And then we'll see what happens. Last night was a good example of how sometimes we will move slow because of things like that. But it was a very, very, very good conversation. I had a real good time. Everything else is on at Tattoo Theist on YouTube, where the Tuesday live streams are that are topic-based discussions where everybody votes on a poll most of the time. And that is a topic that we do. Recent stuff has been Marcion, the Gnostic Gospels, miracles. And then this coming Tuesday, we are talking about the Gospels in general, the historicity of them, the timing, dating of them, corroboration, things like that, the validity of them in a general sense. What? Just grunts and whatnot. Big words hard. That is true. That is true. Very accurate. We're in the book of Job. We pass through a lot of the setup for everything. So if you have not read the book of Job, then you're going to be extremely lost. But I will try to explain some stuff along the way. And I think it's just all of us here tonight. So everybody's probably on the same page. This is now when the friends start getting involved. So Eliphaz, the Temanite, comes in and he's answering Job. If one ventures a word with you, will you be impatient? Yet who can keep from speaking? Behold, you have instructed many, and you have strengthened the weak hands. Your words have upheld him who is stumbling, and you have made firm and feeble knees. But now it has come to you, and you are impatient. It touches you, and you are dismayed. Is not your fear of God your confidence? So he's building him up in a sense, but also you're already getting senses of the what do they call it? The sandwich during when you're doing constructive criticism. There's a name for it, but where you say something nice to somebody, then you criticize them, and then you say something nice to them again. There's a vibe of that going on here. Is not your fear of God your confidence? Eliphaz is he's trying to encourage Job to be confident in his faith and his righteousness and who he is. The Bible so far has described Job as an upright man, a man of virtue and morals, who was in the limelight of God's eyes. The irony is that Job is suffering. The irony that we know, because we're on the outside of the story, is that Job is suffering because he is righteous, not in spite of his righteousness. The righteousness is the cause. If Job were not righteous, Job would not be suffering right now within this context. It goes on to say, and the integrity of your ways, your hope. So is not your fear of God your confidence, and is not the integrity of your ways your hope. Hey, Mikkel. I exist me, and I made it. Good evening, folks. Is that coffee or is that Modelo? Code. Is that a euphemism? Hey, there's L. Is it just called the compliment sandwich? I thought they had a fancier name for it. But that would make sense. That is the most straightforward answer. Good to see you, though. Verse 7. Please don't lose the lizard. Verse 7. Remember who that was innocent ever perished. So now he's charging, in a sense, but it's still innocent to a degree. Remember who that was innocent ever perished. Meaning, those who are innocent do not die prematurely. And in most contexts in the Old Testament, those who are innocent do not suffer at the hand of God. They don't suffer God's wrath. So he's implying that because Job is still alive, just living, that he is still holding on in some sense to his righteousness and therefore can still have hope. Like he said in the verse before, the integrity of your ways, your hope. So remember who that was innocent ever perished, or where were the upright cut off, like struck down. As I've seen, those who plow iniquity and sow trouble reap the same. The charges are slowly coming in. Observation of the natural world. This is from Logos. I thought this was well said. It says, observation of the natural world is a key characteristic of wisdom literature, which is true if you think about it and if you look through it. If you look through Proverbs, if you look through Ecclesiastes, it's prevalent, is that observation of the natural world within all of this wisdom literature in the Bible. The core of Job's friend's argument, Eliphaz's argument, suffering is the result of sin, while the central point is true and is echoed again in wisdom literature like Proverbs. Job's friend, his friends, plural, apply it extremely broadly. So not specific to his situation, but broad in a very broad sense. In their view, it says, all those who reap trouble must have sown trouble. They have no room in their theology for a righteous sufferer. So it's painting a picture and it's laying a foundation of a very specific and tight theology. And the point is, because the rest of the text kind of breaks down that theology. The interesting thing is that we as the reader have a very different perspective because we know everything. We know the heavenly counsel that happened in the beginning. We know the actual cause of his suffering. We know the adversary's involvement in it. And so it's interesting from the outside to be able to watch and read through the friends and their theological views from the outside because we know what's going on. By the breath of God they perish, and by the blast of his anger they are consumed. That could be a reference to the death of his children, the blast of his anger, because the kids were taken out by a strong wind, is what it said in chapter 1. By a blast of anger, they are consumed. The roar of the lion, the voice of the fierce lion, the teeth of the young lion are broken. The strong lion perishes for lack of prey, and the cubs of the lioness are scattered. So just imagery of Job as the lion, the cubs are his children, and they were a sufferer of God's wrath is the perspective so far. Now a word was brought to me stealthily. My ear received the whisper of it. He's saying that he had a dream of some kind. He had a dream or a vision. This is the friend talking. So he received some kind, or he's saying he received some kind of word from God. Please don't get me sidetracked tonight. Both Job's friends aren't really his friends at all, kind of evident. Yeah. And it just gets worse and worse, right? Amid thoughts from visions of the night, when deep sleep falls on men, dread came upon me, and trembling, which made all my bones shake. This is him describing his dream or his vision. A spirit glided past my face. The hair of my flesh stood up. It stood still, but I could not discern its appearance. A form was before my eyes. There was silence. Then I heard a voice. Can mortal man be in the right before God? Can a man be pure before his master? So the friend, that's not really a friend, still encouraging in a sense, but he's at this point pushing Job to still have his foot planted in his righteousness and his integrity. There's still an illusion to it, at least a literal illusion, because his theology kind of contradicts that. The irony there is that, actually, we'll come back to that. So can mortal man be right before God? Can a man be pure before his maker? Even his servants, he puts no trust. And his angels he charges with error. So now he's saying that, again, he's reiterating that the innocent do not die prematurely. The innocent do not suffer this way. And he's also now saying that even the angels cannot please God. That God is this absolutely, he's this, that's a good way to put it. He's insatiable in a sense, but he's impossible to please. There's no way to please him. If the angels can't please him, then how the hell could Job please him? So in a sense, he's saying it's hopeless. So we went from being very encouraging in hope to now, in a sense, flipping on it. If the angels can't even meet God's standards, humans have no possible chance at all to meet God's standards. How much more those who dwell in a house of clay, whose foundation is in the dust, who are crushed like the moth. Between morning and evening, they are beaten to pieces. They perish forever without anyone regarding it. Is not their tent cord plucked up within them? Do they not die? And that without wisdom. Did Job know what we know? Isn't the writer of Job unknown? Could it have been Job? I'm a sidetracker. I would very confidently say no to the authorship. I guess, to be fair, I don't see any reason to believe that. I don't think we have anything that would make me confidently think that. And I honestly don't think I've ever heard scholarship try to attribute authorship to Job. Did Job know what we know? Absolutely not. There's no way. There's no way. The entire story is about how Job has no idea what's going on. Everything he says, which a lot of it we're going to read here in a second, because Job is now going to start speaking soon. Job very obviously has no clue what's going on. He has no clue. He blames God. He says that God is being unjust to him. I've always been righteous. Why are you punishing me? If Job knew what if Job knew what we knew, Job would know that. Ghost said, "We are Job." Job would know that he's suffering because he's good. Whereas here in chapter 5 and chapter 6, it's Job just complaining because he's good. I'm good. Why is this happening? I'm righteous. Why is this happening? I've done everything you said. Why is this happening? It would be completely nonsensical if he knew what we knew. So there's no way. There's no way. The authorship is a different story, but I've never heard I've never heard a scholar argue for Job as the actual author. Job's friends would make good elders and deacons in the modern church. Just saying. That's painfully true. Yeah. Painfully true. Go said, I think Job is just a psychological parable to teach us the pattern of obedience through trials and hardships. I definitely think that's a part of it. Yeah. I think there's a very deep theological lesson as well that we'll talk about at the end, like when we're done. I was thinking the same thing. Those aren't friends. Yeah, his friends are definitely not friends. They're bad friends. I feel like it's also how a lot of people were described during this time, though. The inconsistency in the theology is what's interesting to me. How even they flip on what they're pressing on Job theologically. Yeah, I think the theology and the cosmology are involved. Leviathan, etc. Yeah, for sure. For sure. So, chapter 5, call now. Is there anyone who will answer you? You good? I thought you cried for help.
No.
Well, that's good. Hold on one second. Good. Okay. Chapter 5 starts with call now. Is there anyone who will answer you? This is still Eliphaz. Common scene in Psalms and Proverbs too. This type of expression. Is there anyone who will answer you? Call now. It's a form of like lamenting. To which of the holy ones will you turn? Surely vexation kills the fool, and jealousy slays the simple. I have seen the fool taking root, but suddenly I cursed his dwelling. Now he's saying that the success of somebody who is acting foolish or being foolish is a short-lasting thing. I have seen the fool taking root, but suddenly I cursed his dwelling. This is also super common throughout the Old Testament as well. The concept of the fool, the description of being a fool, all throughout wisdom literature, specifically again in like Proverbs and Psalms. But suddenly I cursed his dwelling. His children are far from safety. So now he's going after Job's kids again. They are crushed in the gate, and there is no one to deliver them. The hungry eat his harvest, and he takes it even out of thorns. And the thirsty pant after his wealth. For affliction does not come from the dust, nor does trouble sprout from the ground. But man is born to trouble as the sparks fly upward. One thing here. So for affliction does not come from the dust. This is again from Logos. The natural world does not produce punishments. People's actions do. Eliphaz reinforces his point that a person who suffers deserves it because of sin. So there's that theology. Again, the person who suffers deserves it because of sin. So now he's directly accusing Job of wrongdoing. But man is born to trouble. All people sin and deserve punishment at times in their lives, is what he's saying. This is not unique to this text. This is seen all over the Old Testament. It's a very common occurrence in the Old Testament that you will reap what you sow. That's why that's a saying in the secular world, is because it comes from the Hebrew Bible. So super common, which in my opinion is a part of what this book is actually trying to pull you out of theologically and get you away from. But a man is born to trouble as the sparks fly upward. As for me, I would seek God, and God I would commit my curse, who does great things and unsearchable, marvelous things without number. He gives rain on the earth and sends waters on the fields. He sets on high those who are lowly, and those who mourn are lifted to safety. He frustrates the devices of the crafty, so that their hands achieve no success. Essentially saying God is thwarting people's lives in general. The things that they do, the things that they're trying to achieve, God will thwart them if it does not align with the Almighty. He catches the wise in their own craftiness, and the schemes of the wily are brought to a quick end. They meet with darkness in daytime and grope at no one as the night. But he saves the needy from the sword of their mouth and from the hand of the mighty, so the poor have hope, and injustice shuts her mouth. This where it is? No. Okay. Behold, blessed is the one who God reproves. So it's a good thing what's happening to you. Therefore, despise not the discipline of the Almighty, for he wounds, but he binds up. He shatters, but his hands heal. There's an allusion here to what Job said in chapter 1 about naked I came from my mother's womb, naked shall I return. The Lord gives and the Lord takes away. For he wounds, but he does not bind up. He shatters, but his hands heal. He will deliver you from 6 troubles. In 7, no evil shall touch you. And then do we want to? Yeah, so the numerical saying like this shows up kind of an astonishing amount of times in the Old Testament. But Proverbs is the most common, and then it comes up several times in Job. But his friend is now arguing that the person who turns to God will ultimately be protected from disaster. So he's doing the same thing, and he's now charging him again. You're obviously not turned to God. You're obviously not in line with God. Otherwise, this would not be happening to you. God does not bestow disaster upon those who are actually in connection or in obedience with God. In famine, he will redeem you from death, and in war from the power of the sword. You shall be hidden from the lash of the tongue, and shall not fear destruction when it comes. At destruction and famine you shall laugh, and shall not fear the beast of the earth. There's the beast of the earth. For you shall be in league with the stones of the field, and the beasts of the field shall be at peace with you. You shall know that your tent is at peace, and you shall inspect your folds and miss nothing. You shall also know that your offspring shall be many, and your descendants as the grass of the earth. You shall come to your grave in a ripe old age, like a sheaf gathered up in its season. Behold, this we have searched out. It is true. Hear and know it for your good. Now Job comes through. Gosef 519 is a fractal of the 7,000 year narrative, 6,000 years of trouble, and 1,000 of rest, millennium. I don't know enough, but I see that that makes sense. Are you talking to me?
No.
Oh, I just hear you whispering back there. Oh, okay. Okay. That's interesting though. Is a fractal of the seven. So that was the, let me see. Yeah, he will deliver you from 6 troubles, and 7, no evil shall touch you. And Ghost is saying it is a fractal of the 7,000 year narrative, 6,000 years of trouble, and 1,000 of rest. Is that in alignment with the, what is it, 2031? The movie that we watched. Is that in alignment?
Yeah, it's in alignment.
Okay, okay.
It's just a repeating pattern all over scripture. It's not just in Job.
No, right, just the fractal and how it shows up here. That's it. How many are there? Do you know off the top of your head? Like how many times the fractal comes up?
Dozens.
Does it? Okay. I mean, it's
Yeah, like I don't know exactly how many, but it's dozens.
there's a compelling nature to it for sure. The movie was extremely interesting. There's another one of those, right, that we got to watch.
Did we? I can't even remember if we watched the second one or not.
We watched 2. Yeah, we watched 2. But you said, isn't there a
Okay,
third?
yeah. The third one is strictly about Christ, and the fourth one isn't out yet. I don't know what that's going to be about.
Okay. Yeah, shoot. Try to help remind me. I keep forgetting about it, and then I think about it again. I definitely want to watch it, for sure.
Sure.
Pure blood. 7th chapter of Exodus, verse V first. And the Lord said to Moses, see, I have made you a god to Pharaoh, and Aaron, your brother, shall be your prophet. What's a prophet? What's a prophet in that context, or what's a prophet in general? Mikhail said, Job's friends are friendly because of what Job represented, the object of their desires. Job apparently was the wealthiest and highest ranking, richest man of that region, and a just man to the top of it. I think that's a fair accusation. Yeah. We went over some of it last week. Yeah, last week about Job's status, because you're totally, I agree 100%. Job's status was wildly high. Like that was a huge part of the setup of this text, is really making clear who Job was, why Job was important, how much stuff Job had, the status of his family. So that's, I think that's fair. Yeah, to say that his friends were there for not the best reasons, that Job represented the object of their desire. It's something I've not really thought about a lot. Why the friends were there. I think that's pretty fair, though. They secretly envy Job. Dude, I can't, babe girl. I just can't. They're all over me. It's a zoo of beetles in this room. Oh, David, you got to watch those movies, man. Oh, there you go. Yeah. Ghost will hook you up. These movies are extremely interesting. I am not an end times person. I am not an apocalyptic person, but the movies were pretty convincing. Nature of man's mind being what 'tis conceived to be is the prime cause of divine revelation. Oh my gosh. Great, baby girl. I definitely agree, Mikkel, That's why Satan handpicked Job. Did he though? I might push back on that. Did he handpick Job? I could see you maybe making a case for it. But God said, have you considered, I don't remember the exact verbiage, but have you considered Job? And then he describes him. I don't remember the verbiage. But I know the beginning of it is, have you considered maybe my servant Job is what it is. I'd be interested to see kind of your take on that, Mikkel. Because I could also see a different way of interpreting it where that would make sense. What's happening at the house is Kat just lost the lizard.
I retrieved the lizard.
She found the lizard. The lizard ran away from her. And so she was panicking, trying to get the lizard back. That's what happened. And this is just a normal day at this house. So, times. I'm glad you succeeded.
Everybody's scared of the snakes getting out, but this is the real problem.
That is the real problem.
Okay.
That thing runs and you never get it back.
Okay. Unless you're me, because I got her back.
You did. You did very well. You did very well. All right, chapter 6. This is when Job is now speaking. So this is now Job. And we get his first real involvement since everything happened. Oh, that my vexation were weighted, and all my calamity laid in the balances. For then it would be heavier than the sand of the sea. So he's giving you kind of like imagery of an old school scale with the rod in the middle. And if everything Job was going through was on one side, and all of the sand of the sea was on the other side, what he was going through would be more. So it's a bit dramatic, but it's an interesting illustration. I have a hard time thinking of words today. God was the one who handpicked Job. Yeah, but think about what you said too, because I think there's a potential like interpretive argument for what you said. I think it would just be harder. But I don't totally disagree with it. I think it's something to think about. Because of how theologically deep that beginning of the text is. I think you could make an argument for that. Whether you agree with it or not, I think it exists. Go said, I'm not sure either way. If Satan handpicked Job, would that be because he had a social setup right for experimenting? I don't know. Like, if you're going to read the text literally and exactly the way that it's written, it's pretty clear that God said, have you considered? Because Satan's basically like, I've been wandering to and fro, up and down, just moseying about the earth. And God said, have you considered my servant Job? And then goes on to describe how perfect he is. But I think there's a potential argument for interpretation because what's happening in that first chapter is already really weird. So depending on how you interpret the rest of that situation between God, the council, and Satan, I think you could make a case. It would just be kind of the off the beaten path case, is my opinion. Let the lizard eat the beetles, David said.
I'm for it.
I wish she would. They're driving me insane.
She won't eat crickets, though, and she's supposed to eat those.
That's true. She's been useless for that. It's never boring at Joe and Cat's house. No, it is not. Unfortunately. No, it is not. I heard. Everybody, in fact, heard. In fact, everybody heard you almost eat it over there in the corner of the room.
No, look at her. She's acting like she's this perfect little angel.
I swear to God, Cat. If that lizard runs away again.
You're going to go home now.
Okay. So he gives the illustration of the scale. Everything he's going through is worse than if you were to put every grain of sand in the entire sea on the opposing side of the scale. He is struggling. This is the first real indication of him being a whiny man. This is when this all begins. For the arrows of the Almighty are in me. One thing that is worth pointing out that's interesting, or at least will be to two of you, is that the term for the Almighty is Shaddai, which is just not the most common.
Wait,
and it
what?
Shaddai.
Oh, okay.
And it does translate to Almighty. It's relatively specific, I guess I would say. It's the first time that Job names God as the cause of what he's going through. So this is kind of this is a pivotal moment in the book of Job. This is when he first says, "It is you. You are what's doing this to me. For the arrows of God are in me. The arrows of the Shaddai, the Almighty, are in me." It's the first direct hit towards God for what he's going through. And it begins a long, long list and a long expose of him now blaming God for everything. "My spirit drinks their poison." Good work, baby. Love you, bye. "My spirit drinks their poison. The terrors of God are arrayed against me. Does the wild donkey bray when he has grass, or the ox low over his fodder? Can that which is tasteless be eaten without salt? Or is there any taste in the juice of the mallow? My appetite refuses to touch them. They are as food that is loathsome to be. Oh, that I might have my request, and that God would fulfill my hope, that it would please God to crush me, that he would let loose his hand and cut me off." So before, Job had wished, I think it was last week, where Job had wished he had never been born. He got very dramatic for a moment. He wished he had never been born. He wished that he had died at birth. Here, he's now beginning to just wish that he would die now. "I would like to die moving forward, if I could. That it would please God to crush me, that he would let loose his hand and cut me off." They were Job's friends as obstacles. They were Job's friends as obstacles in life can be our friends. Oh, there's one of those moments. Is God using evil for good? It's a good question. I guess if I'm understanding what you're asking, otherwise I guess I have a follow-up, but I think it's the same question or very similar, are the friends of Job, are they required or are they important for the theological or psychological point of the text? I think in a sense you have to say that they are. But are they being used in that way? Are they intentional obstacles for Job as a part of the test, if you want to call it that? But there's some argument about whether it's a test or not. But are they intentional obstacles of the test? I think is a good question. What's your take on Job's dear friends? Pureblood replied, metaphorically implied for the benefit of the reader and the listener. We'll come back to that. More of the friends coming. This would be my comfort. I would even exult in pain unsparing, for I have not denied the words of the Holy One. Verse 8. Oh, I skipped. Oh, that I might have my request. No, we did read that. So I have not denied the words of the Holy One. This is him defending himself. It's the beginning of what will continue to be him defending himself. He's asserting his innocence. I've done nothing wrong. I don't deserve the suffering that has come to me. He was told by his friend to repent, essentially. Go to God and repent for what you've done. Job stubbornly and kind of rightly is like, I'm not going to repent. I didn't do anything wrong. I just feel like I'm being attacked. So he's not going to repent, and he doesn't repent. But he now begins to complain to God. I am innocent. Why is this happening? What is my strength that I should wait? And what is my end that I should be patient? Is my strength the strength of stones, or is my flesh bronze? Have I any help in me when resource is driving from me? He who withholds kindness from a friend forsakes the fear of the Almighty. My brothers are treacherous as a torrent bed, as torrential streams that pass away, which are dark with ice, and where the snow hides itself. When they melt, they disappear. When it is hot, they vanish from their place. The caravans turn aside from their course. They go up into the waste and perish. Uh-oh. Hold on. There we go. What is happening? I'm getting skips on my end. 1 second. Okay, here we go. When they melt, disappear. When it is hot, they vanish from their place. The caravans turn aside from their course. They go up into the waste and perish. The caravans of Tema look. The travelers of Sheba hope. This is oddly specific and interesting. So these two places were really famous, like trading centers. They were like markets in Arabia. It's an odd, very specific thing that I've always found kind of peculiar, just because most of this text is not specific. I feel like the author went to great lengths to not specify a lot of things, mostly because it's not the point of the text. The text is not a historical document. It's obviously meant to express a principle and more, but that type of thing, not so much geography and things like that. So I've always kind of found that interesting. They are ashamed because they were confident. They come there and are disappointed, for you have now become nothing. So, and maybe this is why, but Tema and Sheba, the merchants who use these trading centers, they would go through pretty dire, the desert, essentially. And so if they did not have access to what seems to be like these water sources that were placed throughout or along the trade route, then they would die. So they are ashamed because they were confident that that the water would be there, is what it seems he's alluding to, or what he's trying to express. They come there and are disappointed. So what they assumed would be there, their sustenance, their water, if it were not on those trading routes, they would die. It's an oddly specific thing, but it's an interesting thing. So Job is now, like, in a sense, he's accusing his friends of this type of behavior, that his friends have been a disappointment. And in his friends have been a disappointment in their assumptions about him. It's a very deep accusation, but it's an interesting one nonetheless. For you have now become nothing. You see my calamity and are afraid. Have I said, make me a gift? Or from your wealth, offer a bribe for me? Or deliver me from the adversary's hand? Or redeem me from the hand of the ruthless? All rhetorical questions, obviously. For you have now become nothing. Job is comparing his friends to those desert streams, which were full once with rushing water, or perhaps stagnant water, but water nonetheless, but then are dry in the summer. The hot summer become dry. Back to the traveling trader example, is if they did not have those, if they were empty, the travelers would die. It's very deep. It's a very deep one. It's very oddly specific. Snake Mom enters the chat. That is the queen of nuts. This house is insanity all of the time. Pureblood said, we may then without any scruple affirm that the prophets did no other way understand the revelations of God than by the help of imagination. Because the imagination is wandering and unconstant. I feel like there's more there. Does become nothing mean you've been humbled? I would not say so in this context, no. But that's I don't think the context here would. I think he's still just telling that story about the travelers. For you have now become nothing. So it's in relation to the streams that follow up. He's accusing his friends. This is still an accusation of the friends. So as the desert streams would be full of water for the travelers to be able to use. And I'm sorry, in the winter, they'd be full of water for the travelers to use, but then dry out in the summer. So when the travelers need the water, they do not have access to it. It was right after he's accusing his friends of being a disappointment. So I don't think he's directly saying that they had been humbled. because I don't think that would make sense in the like very direct context. He's calling them empty, is what it seems to me, is that he's accusing them of being empty and a disappointment because of their accusations of him. What does that mean exactly? What does what mean exactly? The stream thing? Or something else? Or are you talking about Pure Blood? Because I kind of want him to explain more about that as well. You see my calamity and are afraid. So that's how that ends too. So for you have now become nothing. You see my calamity and are afraid. He's still in the middle of kind of accusing his friends of it. Have I said, make me a gift? And then he accuses them, have I done this to you? Have I done this to you? Have I done this to you? And the answer is no to all of them. They're all rhetorical. So he's still just kind of retorting to them after they were a bit rough, but they get way more rough. Teach me and I will be silent. Make me understand how I have gone astray. How forceful are upright words. But what does reproof from you reprove? Do you think that you can reprove words? When the speech of a when the speech of a despairing man is wind, you would even cast lots over the fatherless and bargain over your friend. He's still just charging them, because Job knows he's innocent, and his friends are not acting or behaving towards him as if he were innocent. They're acting and saying things to him that they would say to a guilty man. Job, it is your fault. You are not just, you are not righteous, and God is punishing me. You are experiencing the wrath of God for something that you've done. But nobody really knows what he's done. And Job knows that he's done nothing. But now be pleased to look at me, for I will not lie to your face. Please turn, let no injustice be done. Turn now, my vindication is at stake. Is there any injustice on my tongue? Cannot my palate discern the cause of calamity? Okay, here, real quick. Yeah, that's a good summary. So 29, please turn, let no injustice be done. Turn now, my vindication is at stake. Logo says this. Job pleads for compassion from his friends. So after charging them, accusing them, he's now pleading, in a sense, for compassion. The Hebrew term that occurs here is used often in the context of people repenting or turning away from sin, which is interesting. It is also used to describe God turning away from his anger, which makes sense. That wouldn't make sense. 30 said, is there any injustice on my tongue? So he continues to assert his innocence in the situation. This is, I'm sure as everybody knows, but maybe something you don't consistently think about, is the on my tongue. The use of that term and the relation of it. And the relation of it within like the wisdom literature is really, really, really common. So much so that it's one of the things that gets quoted a number of times in the New Testament, is that type of language from some of the wisdom literature, because it was so common. What comes out of a person's mouth is a direct correlation to the person's wisdom. If you were wise, what comes out of your mouth will be wise, and it will be gentle, and it will be calm. And if you are an unwise person, then what comes out of your mouth will be vile. Is there any injustice on my tongue? Indicating that he does not believe that there was, or that there is. Oh, I see right there, Joe, right where? What did I miss? I have my ideas about imagination, about what imagination actually is, but I don't want to sidetrack. Maybe we can get into it later on Discord. Well, we have 10 minutes and we're done. So if you want to give it quick, I'm down. But if you'd rather do it in Discord, that's cool too. Tampa's on board for the imagination talk. That's something I have not really thought about a lot. Like, what is imagination? I feel like I still missed something. Or is this off of Pure Bloods? Yeah, it's got to be. Then by the help of imagination. I would like more context on that. What exactly this means. We may then, without any scruple, affirm that the prophets did no other way understand the revelations of God than by the help of imagination. I would like more context on what you mean by that. Oh, uh-oh. All right, well, if you... Yeah, there you go. You're back.
Oh, okay. I was just saying I'd prefer to do it on Discord because it's complicated.
Oh, that's fine. Then just, will you tag me? I want to read it.
Tag
And,
Tampa.
yeah, I'm curious.
It's probably stuff you've kind of heard me talk about before. It's just I would need to kind of gather my thoughts. I'm all jumbled right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure some of it for sure. I'm curious. Pure Blood, I hope you go in that conversation on Discord because I want to understand more of what you're saying specifically. I don't feel like it was enough information. That sounds snaky. See what you did there. Anything else? We have a little bit of time, and then we'll wrap up for the night. Tuesday, 7 p.m. We're doing the Gospels. Job wasn't handpicked. Say more, Gary. Say more. Job was handpicked by God. At least you have to say that. You have to at least say that. Discord was difficult for me. I don't have a phone. Apology for lack of context. Not trying to sidetrack. Okay, well, understandable. Discord is difficult, but if all you have is a computer, I would go so far as to say it is much easier on a computer. But that's just me. And I totally get how Discord is a pain to learn if you've never used it. There's no doubt about that. Pure blood bummer. Yeah, some people will just... Discord's hard. Massive learning curve. Gary, do you think Job was not handpicked at all, or was not handpicked by Satan? Gary, whoa, out of the blue. I just figured it out yesterday. Discord, yeah, dude, it's hard. If you've joined Discord and you're having a hard time with it, send me tag me in Off Topic, and I can send you a very short, very easy tutorial. I recorded something on my phone that shows you how to use the things that matter. It's helped some people. It's very rudimentary. But if it's just totally blowing your mind, then it would at least help with the basics. It sucks. I had never used Discord before this. So I was adding you directly. Adding who? Who, me? To Discord? I don't even know how you do that. Become friend. Actually, yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. That's a lie. Piggybacking on what Ghost said earlier, I see this trial as the refining of Job and his friends were used by God as part of that process. Yeah, which from a literary perspective, I get. From a theological perspective, I have a hard time with that. And not because I don't think it could happen, but I think it's problematic. For to be clear, based on my other biased beliefs, I find it problematic. I find the idea of a lot of what happens in the Old Testament, to be honest, problematic. And I feel like I've talked a lot about that. But I totally get that, and I think it's one of, if not the most common, kind of overarching view of the text. So I think it's fair. Fletch, glad you figured it out. It's a pain. It's a total pain. So if you come to Discord and you stay long enough to figure it out, I think it's totally worth your time to figure it out. But I absolutely get that it's a pain if you never used it. It's a different world over there. But it's fantastic for the stuff we do. It's awesome. It's so perfect. Job is a distilled metaphor for what everyone experiences every day, just on a different scale. The pattern is what's important. I'm with that more, yeah. I think that's very true. It's a blown up example of a small scale reality. I think that's very fair. Barely. It takes time, dude. It takes time. Just do 10 minutes a day and you'll figure it out. I mean, as long as you can figure out how to participate in the chat rooms, like each channel, that's really all you need. The rest, I feel like, just comes over time. It just looks more complicated than it is. Trying to see. Gary left us totally hanging. It's very disappointing. Gary just came in, said thing, and then left. I would have liked to get into that. Philosophy, theology, any difference? Is that a question? I'm not sure that there is. I feel like theology is a specific form of philosophy. There are obvious differences, but if you're going to be nitpicky or if you're talking like specifically, I don't really see much of a difference. Theology is like a form of philosophy. To the way I see it, at least. I think the similarities are too many. But there are definitely some differences. It says yes question. God threw a dart at a dartboard and it landed on Job. I mean, the better question is, did Job exist at all? Like those are some of the things. I'm hoping at the very end because I have like a list of questions from years ago. Like all the questions you can ask when reading the book of Job. I have it. So I'm hoping at the end we can just go through all of it. But that's one of the obvious ones. Like historically, was Job a historical character? Or is this all just made up, on principle? Is this a story to help us learn something? Or is it a story largely embellished, but of a real person to help us learn something?
Personally, don't think Job was a literal person. I think he's a vehicle to teach us something about ourselves.
That's where I sit. But you'd be
Well, I mean, that
surprised.
a couple books in the Bible are like that, but not I don't think all of them are. Maybe some of them are like a mix of that, where they take a historical person and kinda, like, embellish to make a point, but
Yeah.
I think Job is completely fictional, but that doesn't mean the pattern is fake. It just means that the guy is it's just a vehicle to teach us. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. It's the same as saying, like, take things outside of the Bible. If a story is told to teach about morality, if you find out the people in the story were not real people, does it take away from the morality or the moral principle at all? No. People just get all twisted about the Bible because it's supposed to all be literally true from like the fundamentalist view. And I can't tell if
I
that's dying or not.
try to I try to look at it like there is an all-encompassing invisible pattern that exists. And the only way to kind of make that pattern known to people is to attach things that we understand, like people and names and places, to make us kind of visualize that pattern.
Right.
But most people get too hung up on the window dressing, like the guy and the names and what time did this happen and stuff like that, that they completely overlook the pattern part of the story.
Yeah. 100%. That too, with just like we've talked about it a bunch, but like this was all oral for so long. So to be able to pass it on orally, like you had to be able to remember it. People had to remember it. So putting it as as a whimsical story with this elaborate plot and this whole thing that happens before the story in the heavenly realm, like that's how you get people to remember something, is to make it exciting and have specific details that you're like you get tied to. Like you said, those things are required, whether it's true or not. They're required. If you tell a true story from the Old Testament, but it doesn't have enough significance and detail to make people remember it during an oral time in history, like it's just going to die and disappear.
I mean, there would actually be another way to do it, but it would be like math or code. And ancient people aren't gonna be able to comprehend that. Modern people can't even comprehend that. So it's like, of
Yeah.
course it has to be a story. That's the only way.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's just kind of how people work.
Yeah, we're narrative factories. Like that is what people live on is stories.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And I agree that I think a lot of the Old Testament, I think I think a lot of it is underlying literal, but I think a lot of that even is then embellished as a narrative. And I don't think that takes away in any way from the validity of it. I just I don't see why it would, because I don't think the Bible is meant to be a literal history book. I don't think that was ever its purpose, and I don't think it's its purpose now. I think it's a book of principles for the most part. There's more, obviously, but I think we get a lot of really interesting stories in the Old Testament that are based in a reality, or at least have a real principle that was trying to be taught. And then I think a lot of the details and fun stuff, the interesting things, I don't think all of that actually happened. And I don't think a lot of scholars at this point do either. I think it's changed pretty dramatically since the fundamental days. The universal laws of nature, whereby all things are done and determined, are nothing else but God's eternal decrees. I like that. That's good. That's well said. The heavenly dartboard. That's too reductionist. David said, whether Job is real or not, the principles learned are identical. Right, and that's all that matters. I think the problem with Job is one of the things, and we'll really talk about it at the end of the book, but one of the things that's really problematic that I go back and forth about, if this was just intended to be a story to teach a principle, the heavenly realm thing with God talking to Satan and all this in the beginning just becomes a part of the story and helps set the stage. It's narrative building. From a literary perspective, I get it. And it's fine because it does dramatically impact the story. If the goal of this book was theology, I find it earth-shattering in its implications and trying to make sense of the rest of the story after that and theology in general. It just becomes very problematic. If it's just narrative, if it's the principle, and the beginning is just narrative building, then I think that makes a lot more sense. I think it's a lot easier to live with, if nothing else. The Lus were not more beloved of God than other nations. I assume the Jews. Clutch said, people with genealogies and places, for example, yes, it's a book of principles, but a lot of it is literal. I agree. I think a lot of it is literal. I just don't think all of it is literal. And I don't think it was ever intended to be read as a word for word literal text. And I also know for an absolute fact, we don't have the word for word literal text. We have down the line versions of it. Mikkel said, and stories and narratives are a legitimate product of that God-given tool called imagination. I'm curious about this imagination thing. This is not something I ever think about at all. I don't know if I've ever thought about it in this type of context. So I'm very curious to see where you guys go with that. Go said, I don't believe God would give us riddles that are impossible to solve. We need to be patient and vigilant. Here's the thing, man. That's one thing I don't agree. I'm starting more and more and more to believe there are certain things we're not supposed to solve. I really am. And I don't know why. I'm working on it, trying to figure it out. But I think that's one of the things that the Gnostics had an interesting take on, is the secrets. The secrets.
Well, look at it like this, Joe. I think we solve riddles throughout time because we have cell phones now, and they didn't have cell phones 100 years ago. We
True.
solved the riddle. It's just all throughout time, and knowledge increases, and the Bible talks about knowledge increasing.
Mm-hmm.
So eventually, I think we will reach some sort of aha moment, like a eureka moment. Maybe that's the millennium. I don't know. But I don't think we're just dumb forever. I think we increase in our understanding.
I think that's definitely true. I think it's for sure true. I definitely don't think that we don't. I just wonder sometimes. But it's
We've
not.
certainly not attained any like eureka moments yet, but maybe in small batches. But the ultimate eureka,
Sure.
no.
No, and I think I could see I could see the millennium being it. I could see that. Like that would make sense if it increases over time, which the Bible definitely talks about. If that is then the end point where the, as you put it, the eureka moment happens, I could definitely see all that for sure. I think it's reasonable.
I mean, think about like what scholars know about Koine Greek now compared to what they knew about it in the year 1500. Like
Oh yeah,
we know way more about it now because of material that was discovered, 100 years ago.
without a
So
doubt,
it
without a
just
doubt.
increases.
I just wonder. I am still stuck that there is this conception, some conceptual cutoff where the human period just cannot conceive certain things, which which is a Gnostic thing, but it's one of the only things I agree with. But I just very much align with that
Well, I
theory.
think that's objectively true. I think they were right about that because there are computers that can't run programs because the hardware won't allow it.
Right, and I think we see
But
it with other things too. But does that ever change? Like you're saying, we could still increase in technology and everything. I mean, if you mesh man and machine, what comes from that? Maybe things that we could not previously conceive, you can begin to. I don't know. I don't know.
yeah, I think capacity is always an issue. Like
Hmm.
certain knowledge can't fit into certain capacities. You have to increase the capacity before the understanding can be applied.
Right.
Um, I think our spiritual capacity increases all the time through struggle and through discovery and introspection and stuff. So it's just gradual. But yeah, I know what you mean though. There is a cap.
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be. There's got to be. But still, to be fair, I wonder if there's some advancement that could remove the cap. And then it makes you think about weird stuff like makes you think about like alien stuff or some of the Enoch things, the mixing of species. I wonder if that is one of those things that could move the cap, shift it
Well, I
forward.
mean, we're supposed to get new bodies, right? So
Right.
I think that whatever that is, that's when we get to know more because our capacity has a limit.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I don't know. These are the things I think about. The imagination thing I've never thought about. So I'm genuinely very curious about that. This is the type of stuff I stare at the ceiling and think about.
Well, I would just say the imagination isn't generated in the brain. It's
Mm.
filtered by the brain. Um, it's like the dam metaphor that I've used.
Mm-hmm.
And all dams aren't created equal. So, like, it's the same water, it's the same imagination, if you want to call it the Akashic records, or there's like a field that we're drawing information from, but each brain has its individual limit on what it can perceive from that field that's everywhere,
Right. Right. Okay.
which is why you can get different opinions from the same movie because every brain isn't going to be able to grasp certain concepts from the source, like which is the movie in this example.
Sure. Okay. No, that makes
Um,
sense.
but there's more to it than that.
Yeah, no, I definitely want to read the full
But that's the
breakdown.
gist.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. That makes perfect sense. Interesting. Oh, I missed something.
Same.
And metaphor at the same time, ultimate communicates because ultimate communicates in paradox. Oh, that was connected with your earlier one. I got
Fletcher,
you.
are you calling like God the ultimate?
I assume capitalized that the election of the laws concerning nothing else but the temporal welfare of their bodies, pure blood. It's quite real and metaphor at the same time. I'm a bit lost. I hope you clarify. Man, I just got slammed with chat again. This thing keeps getting delayed, man. Gary came back a long time ago, apparently. Gary said, no, I didn't leave anyone hanging just listening to Job wasn't handpicked from God. He only asked if Job was considered. Satan is the one who chose Job. How could you say that, though? Here's the thing. I don't agree. I think if we read it literally, I don't agree. And I could be wrong, so I'm open to being wrong. But I'm curious now. So real quick, I want to see. So in chapter 1, let's see. So Satan says, I've been walking to and fro, walking up and down on it, referring to the earth. And the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man who fears God and turns away from evil? Have you considered him? Then Satan answers the Lord and said, does Job fear God for no reason? I think it's really hard to say, reading it on its face, that God did not shove Job directly in front of Satan. Satan was not considering him. Satan was obviously just walking around, checking things out. Where did you come from, Satan? I've been wandering around, walking to and fro on the earth, walking up and down on it. God throws Job under the bus directly. The Lord says to Satan, have you considered specifically my servant Job? There is none like him. And then he goes so far as to then set him up as the best of the best. He is the best I have to make you look like an idiot, Satan. Have you considered him? So I don't know. I disagree. On its face, like I was saying to Mikhail, I think there's a way that you could do gymnastics and interpret it a different way. But I think if you're doing the way it reads, I think it would be hard to do, personally. But I'm comfortable with being told you disagree. That's just how I see that. I think you got to jump through some hoops to say otherwise. Does he see our hearts like God does? Who? Oh, good old Satan. What about both Satan and God choosing Job simultaneously? But here's the thing, like, what in the text makes you think that Satan chose Job at all? That's what I don't get. From the text, if we're doing fancy hermeneutics and moving some things around and making some assumptions that are not in the text, then I'm totally with it. I get it. But if we're just exegeting the text, it says what it says. And I don't see any way to really get around it. There's no reason to think Satan was aware of Job. There's no reason to think Satan wanted Job. There's just nothing in the text at all to make you think that. And even after Job is proposed, Satan has a follow-up question to make sure Job is even the guy that he wants. Does Job fear God for nothing, for no reason? Have you not put a hedge around him to protect him from every side? You have blessed the work of his hands, yada, yada, yada. I don't know. I struggle with that. I don't often blatantly disagree, but I think this might be one of them. Go said, looks like God chose Job. We should ask ourselves, what does that mean on a psychological level? Do we examine our thoughts in this analytical way? I think we do. Yeah, I completely agree. I don't think that Satan sees our heart like God does, since we are told to guard our hearts. Well, why would you have to guard your heart if there was nothing to guard it from? Unless I'm misunderstanding. All right, did I miss anything important? Would God allow a good soul into heaven if the soul didn't know him? Ooh, girl. Cookie cutter Christian answer? Of course not. Exegetical analysis of the New Testament from somebody who doesn't read the New Testament? Of course not. I'm totally kidding too, but that is the answer. That is what like the cookie cutter Christians would say. Would God allow a good soul into heaven if the soul did not know him? No, because the Gospels, if you take them as absolute, the Gospels make pretty clear no. That would not fit the bill. Ghost just got asked if he was a Gnostic. I would not call Ghost a Gnostic, no. I will answer that for him gladly. I do not think that fits.
Yeah, I would say I'm certainly not a Gnostic, but I do recognize some of their ideas as being legitimate. But
For
I
sure.
think some of their conclusions about those ideas are false.
Yeah.
So I guess take that for what it is.
Yeah. I mean, a percentage, small bit, minor bit. Interesting
Right, because
points.
like we've said, saying the Gnostics isn't precise enough. You have to talk about like what kind of Gnostic idea, because there's tons of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, I get what he means, but
Yeah, no, that's important to point out. Yeah, for sure. Clutch, if you did not see, we talked about Gnosticism a few weeks ago on the other YouTube channel. I will put it here. If you look under the live streams, It was like 2 weeks ago, so it should be near the top. And then we talked about Marcion in the early New Testament. And then this week, it's a good old segue there. This week we are talking about we're talking about the Gospels in general, history, basically historically breaking them down, with the intention of understanding, are they valid? Are these things we should put the full weight of our belief in? Last week was last week was Marcion, which is this one, and then we did Gnosticism before that. So to Ghost's point, what kind of Gnostic? Because there were many. And in the video, we very, very briefly kind of talked about it. We at least talked a lot about how many there are, and then how Gnostic kind of just got used as the term heretic. I'm going to roll here in a few minutes. Satan has no power over us unless we allow it. He has the power to attack the same way a military would, but he doesn't have the same access to you as God unless you allow it. That's a rough one. For me, being the heretic in the room, that's a rough one. I get it. Definitely get it. That is the common belief for sure. I don't see that. I think we see a lot of Satan attacking in the biblical accounts to varying degrees, and I don't think those people allowed it. I don't think the text expresses that those people allowed it. I think it happened to them. I think in the New Testament, even, where it's much less of a direct topic, it still seems as though it just happens to them, not that they necessarily allow it. But I would grant that, like, there's not a lot of breakdown of it ever. It's just, it's always very brief. There's not always a lot of context to kind of whittle through it. So I get it. And then I definitely get it when you go into some of the later gospel accounts that say things like that. None shall prevail against you, stuff like that. I think when you compare it to the accounts, it's very contradictory to me. Serpents have principalities, and they have other leaders that they assign just for you. Is that true? Pure blood, happy is the man that findeth wisdom, and the man that getteth understanding. That's gold. Good stuff. Possibly looking over ancestors even won't want to say looking over, observing your bloodlines, I mean. I don't think all serpents, Ghost said. I don't think all serpents are evil. I think serpent alludes to a mechanism in our minds that allows for deep thought, visions, etc. Some are good, some are not. I mostly agree, yeah. I would never describe it like that, but I like that description. Yeah, that's good. The mostly deadly serpent is the tongue, Blood said. Not all fire
or the
elementals are
forked
serpents.
tongue that speaks double speak.
Yeah, specific. There you go. Yes, it's scary for a lot of people. I feel like I miss some of your messages, Clutch, and then it doesn't make sense to me. Like trying to keep up. The Prince of Darkness knows us better than we do. Yeah, I don't know. This was interesting. I don't remember where, but I was in a conversation about this today. Maybe it was Twitter. I don't remember. But we were kind of having back and forth about Satan. What power does Satan have? How does Satan interact with the world? Like, what does that look like? Why are we told to guard our hearts? Why are we told to pray against him? And then told, well, he has no power. The Satan of great power, we have to take all these precautions to guard ourselves. And then, oh, but he has no power. He's been defeated. It's like there's no consistency. You cannot have that both ways. Satan is either a very clear, prevalent adversary to both God, like the account in the Bible says, as well as to man, or he's not. Like he's either relevant in this context, or he's not. I've never heard a good explanation of how he can be both relevant and scary and irrelevant and defeated. It's nonsense to me, the heretic in the room.
Right. If Jesus is warning us against deception, why would he do that if Satan was powerless?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It makes no sense. No sense. I think these are just things that sound nice. And unfortunately, when you bring things that sound nice together, they do not make any sense whatsoever. Specifically over this domain and our vessel to a level you can't even just look at humans. Okay, Cat. How much carnage they can do. Clutch, may I make a request? Try to type more in just one message. Because I don't like missing what you're saying, but I have a hard time keeping up with it. I think, what does YouTube let you do? Like 180 words or something? If you could. Obviously, live your life how you want. But that would help me at least try to keep up with what you're saying. Because it seems like good stuff. I just have a hard time. Sorry, I have autism. Are you serious or are you messing with me? If you're serious, I totally understand that. You do whatever you got to do. I want to know what you're saying because the parts that I catch are good. And then I feel bad because I feel like I missed something. But yeah, do whatever you got to do. Totally understandable. Don't worry about it. Just a suggestion if possible, because I don't want to miss what you're trying to get at, because it does seem good. Imagine what Satan feels like for you. Heretics unite. Isn't that a comic book thing? What comic book was that? Something unite. Power Rangers. Power Rangers unite. Look at me. I'm cultured. I don't ever remember quotes from stuff. Mikkel said, like, yeah, why do we need to guard our hearts then? Yeah, it's nonsense. The Christians, what they've done to like heaven, to God, and to hell and Satan is, in my opinion, it's pulled them beyond anything we can even make sense of anymore. It's all just become like Disney stories. It's become so unrealistic. Very yeah, I'm having a really hard time with words today. It's become very fantastical and not very serious, I feel like, because of what we've done to it. And it's very sad because I think it's arguably the most serious underlying reality of the entire Bible, of life, potentially.
That's often why I use like cartoon or comic book version of Christianity because it really is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I wish it wasn't. And I don't really know how to change people's minds on it because it's a lifelong thing. They've just always seen it that way.
Slow. I think it's the only way, man. I think the church will just, we've talked about it a million times, but I think it's got to be dismantled. Like it'll be a slow dismantling, and then I think there will be just a slow shift. I'm hopeful that whatever's happening right now between like the Orthodox and the Catholics, the numbers are really going up. And those are very traditional, not cartoony, not fog machines, not cookie cutter, and not make you feel good, really, for the most part. They're more like, this is tradition. Sometimes it's nice, sometimes it is not nice. It is what it is, regardless of disagreements of theology, disagreements of tradition, whatever. The message is more pure to like what the Bible says. Even if we don't fully agree with it, it's at least more pure. And they believe in hell. And they believe that there is an adversary or adversaries, plural. So I hope it's a part of that shift. More people are moving to the traditional side of Christianity, and I think with that, my point was that they'll begin to abandon the cartoony, the fog machine, the grossness of what has become kind of the evangelical Protestantism. Nothing against those people, to be clear. I just think they were a huge part of what cartoonized evil and good and God and Satan.
Yeah, I don't even think it was deliberate. I just think that they were inept and it spread and now we're here. So
Yeah, I don't think so either. I don't think it was deliberate. Unless the whole thing is Satan. The whole damn thing is Satan trying to take over Christianity. I've heard that.
I actually used to think it was deliberate, but and I mean maybe it is, but
It totally could
just
be.
I don't buy it.
It just would make more sense. It's Occam's razor. It's like what makes the most sense. We see these ebbs and flows all throughout history with all kinds of things, and if you look at it like with culture broadly, we kind of do that with stuff. Like the more modern end of culture, we do that to all kinds of things. Like we cartoonize them, we make them silly. I just feel like it's not a stretch to say it was kind of organic.
Yeah, and if it was deliberate, it would have to be on a level that kind of goes above human. So
Right.
since I'm a human, I'll just stick to this level and think that it was probably due to incompetence
Yeah.
and pride, because even if someone's wrong and they realize they're wrong, they're going to hold on to the wrong thing because
Oh,
they have a flock or they have a church and they don't want to, I don't know.
I think there's so
We see
much
that
of
in
that.
science too. It's just a human thing.
Oh, for sure, yeah. Without a doubt. That's a huge scholarly thing. Guys will hold on to something that you can tell they don't believe. You can tell the more you listen to them and you watch them over years, you can tell they no longer believe what they're arguing for. But they can't do it. You can't take it. The cultural the admittance of it in the light of culture, like they're not willing to do it. I think that's a lot of people. I think there are a lot of pastors today that preach every Sunday and don't believe in God at all. And I think they're doing it because they feel like they don't have other options. And that's freaking painful to think about. Free will of humans is the reason God gives a certain amount of power to Satan. The game is only fixed against Satan. That doesn't mean we have the advantage. We are gamblers. Ugh, no. I could not disagree more. I get it. And I think a lot of people see it like that, but I do not. So I'm big on free will. I'm with you there. But you said free will of humans is the reason God gives a certain amount of power to Satan. To me, this is just so silly. This idea that God is like, okay, evil, that which destroys and kills and robs and steals and rapes and pillages. You can have a little bit of it. Here, I will consciously grant you X percentage of ability and control over that which I love. Why? In the same breath, we'll say, well, the fall of man happened. They chose to sin through free will. And God allowed that to happen. Okay. God is implicated in this evil then. God is allowing it to persist. He's allowing it to happen in the beginning for the fall of man. He let it be there. He let it happen. Well, it's because of free will, fine. But the reason of God giving a certain amount of power to Satan, you're saying God is fixing the game against us, in a sense. You said the game is only fixed against Satan, but that's not true. If God is giving a certain amount of power to Satan, God is fixing the game against us. He's stacking the deck towards Satan to a percentage. I don't see how you rectify that theologically. I don't understand that. It's in the similar sense of like, if we say God is responsible for Satan and what he's allowed to do, you're saying that God is the reason for original sin. If you regress it backwards, God allows Satan 10% control. Okay, so Satan comes to earth with 10% control as the serpent, talks to Eve about the fruit. Well, if you trace that back, then God did that. He's implicated in it to whatever, 10%. It's theologically, it makes no sense. Yes.
I think this is a problem with looking at Satan like a person.
Yes.
I understand why they wrote it that way because it's easy to remember, but God didn't create Satan. God created free will, and Satan is a byproduct of free will. There's no other way to have free will without something to choose against.
Right.
So it's
Right.
not its own thing. It's just the ignoring God. It's whatever happens when you ignore God, that's Satan. And
Which
that's the only way I can think about it because if Satan is a person, like that just doesn't make any sense. I
Makes
think
no
Satan lives
sense.
in all of us,
Yes.
just like
Yes.
God lives in all of us.
I
Um,
agree
that's my
absolutely.
take, I guess, you know?
So then an interesting piece of that, and then I gotta go because I'm sure Cat's ready. Um, I think that explanation, it's definitely the one I'm with. But I think where it may become problematic, ironically, is actually with stories like Job, where the whole premise of the story is that the human did nothing wrong. It's confirmed over and over and over the human did nothing wrong. But yet we have this Satan that is given some degree of control to attack the person. So if our idea is that Satan is simply turning away from God or rejecting God or doing evil or whatever, anything within that realm, I think Job becomes kind of problematic to a point. Have you ever thought about that?
I'd have to kind of just run through what you just said because I was thinking about two other things.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, think about it. Maybe bring it up next week because I agree with you about Satan, and that's how I view it 100%. I think when you have stories like Job, it becomes a little bit more complicated. The idea of Satan being that rather than having some kind of external figure, being an inward thing we do versus being an external figure that has an effect.
I think it can become external when it's embodied by other people in our lives. So it's the chicken and the egg problem. It's a system of internal and external feedback.
Consi-
So since everyone has Satan in them, they can embody that and then ruin your life physically.
can say, in your view, does Satan ever have a consciousness of any kind? Of any kind, even if it's very different.
Well, yeah, because I think Satan is whenever we are mulling over a choice in our mind, and one choice is clearly the best choice, and we, on one level, we rationally understand that it's the best choice, but then we'll do the wrong one. The more we do that, the more Satan manifests in the real world because we're making a choice that has an impact in the real world.
That's right. You're on
So,
the little Satan theory, right? Isn't that kind of what you believe? Where like everybody is a little Satan or contains it
yeah,
or
a potential
potential.
Satan depending on what they choose to do.
Okay, right. Okay, then yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, that makes
So yeah,
perfect
I
sense.
mean, it's more of like a psychological view of it all. And
Yes.
there could be something I'm missing, but as far as like an actual person, that doesn't make sense to me because I think there's many of them.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I would like to at some point then talk to you about Job because I'm with you for the most part. And I don't even think I disagree with any of it. I'm just not sure if I see it exactly the same. But from
Like, how
the
does it align with Job?
yeah, like so if that's what Satan is, if it's the if it's each individual having this potential and then that potential being fulfilled to some degree, how would then the narrative of Job make sense? We don't have to do it today, like think about it. But I'm curious to see what you would say.
Well, I would say, who can read the book of Job and not relate to it on some level?
I mean, for sure. But then if you had to flesh it out, like this is what's happening. So if you had to write, and again, you don't have to do it right now, but if you had to write a commentary on the first 13, 12, first 12 verses of chapter 1, how would that commentary read? How would you explain exactly what's happening, like verse by verse, or like close to it? But like, if you had to explain it to somebody who had no idea what you were talking about with this concept of potential Satan and that being inward in our behavior, if you had to do it, I'd just be curious, kind of how what that would look like.
Maybe I will. Maybe I'll do that. I'll work on that.
Yeah, if you do, let me know. I'd be curious because I
Okay.
agree with you for the most part, for sure. Also, this is the part of theology that can be distracting. You have to flee Satan and guard your heart. It's not enough to understand and love God. I know that sounds anti-salvation, but it's part of it. No, I totally agree with that because to me that kind of indicates behavior. And I'm a big believer of behavior having a lot to do with the salvific law.
Right. You flee Satan every time you choose against Satan.
Right.
Every time you become a Satan to Satan. Every time you look towards God and want to model your life to that blueprint.
Yep.
That's when you flee from Satan.
We got to do a Tuesday on this again, because I know we wanted to look into like the biblical expressions of Satan and kind of break those down, and then maybe we can go through this again. It's been a while. All right,
Yeah,
guys,
it'd be fun.
I gotta go. I just saw Cat's gonna come hit me or something. I'm gonna go eat, but this was good. And Tuesday, remember, we're doing the Gospels. So if you are interested in that, come on Tuesday, 7 o'clock. Not on this YouTube channel, on the other one. If you need to find it, there's a link in, I'm sure there's a link in the description, but there's a link in Discord too. It's just at Tattoo Theist. I'll throw it in there one more time. And that's at 7 p.m. Central Time. I'm going to play Atheist for most of it. I'm going to essentially try to completely tear apart the Gospels, but also give like the apologetic for it. But it should be interesting. So that'll be Tuesday, and then Thursday we're just doing the Book of Giants like normal. So I am going to go eat meatloaf, I think is what she said. Love y'all. This was good stuff. Clutch, it was good to have you again. Elle, it was good to see you again. Gary coming in at the last moment again. Those darts are falling short everywhere. I would love to get more in on this. Gary, come to Discord. There's a link in the chat right there, and I'll just put it right here too. Boom. Click the link, Gary. Click the link. Come hang out. All right, I love you guys. I'm out. Have a good night. Later, Ghost.